Policy shapes the future, and every decision impacts millions of lives. In this episode, we will explore policy making at the highest level. With a large population of Nigerians living in poverty, it is inevitable that these living conditions affect the outcomes of countless policy efforts. We will assess how leaders address urgent, real-world needs within complex political and economic landscapes. Our discussion will spotlight the successes and struggles of crafting effective policies and legislations, drawing from real-world examples where strategic policies have drastically improved lives. Together, we will go through the journey of how these policies come to be, who is involved in making these big decisions, how ideas transformed into actions, and how longevity is ensured. Welcome to the Leading Woman Show Policy Series, brought to you by the National Endowment for Democracy and Luminate. My name is Abosede Jojagan, and today we will discuss the art of policy making. Our guests today are Honorable Kafilat Ogbara, an honorable member of the Federal House of Representatives representing Koshofe constituency. She is a passionate advocate for human and women's rights and is currently the chairperson, House Committee on Women Affairs and Social Development. Our second guest is His Excellency Lieli Moke, former governor of Cross River State and the founder of the Bridge Leadership Foundation. Let's dive into the conversation. Welcome to today's show. We have with us Honorable Kafilat Ogbara, and today we're going to be talking about the art of policy making. Honorable, welcome. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Great. So I want to start our conversation. You are a lawmaker, so some people might be wondering, why are we talking about policy? So my first question is, how as a lawmaker do you determine what policy issues in society are priority to then push forward for legislation?
Thank you very much for that question. I'm a lawmaker, but first, I'm a Nigerian, I'm a human being before being a lawmaker.
That's right.
And before you came into the elections, you've been in the society, you've been with the people, you know what happens out there, you know the basic needs of your people, and most importantly, we went through campaigns for our elections. And when you go through that process, you are able to gather the information, the needs, the concerns of the people, the problems of the people, the real issues that has to do with your people in your constituencies. So you have to, as a lawmaker, after your campaigns, have a proper record of the issues that concerns your constituents. So when you get to office, you'll be able to see how you can address these issues. And first of all, you have to set your agenda. You have to know that this is how you want to go about it. What are the priorities? You should be able to address, the issues, the problems in line of priority as it concerns your people. And of course, I know that technology rules the world. So the first thing I decided to do was to, ensure that I have 2 ICT centers in my constituency. So I also ensure that I constructed an old people's home in my constituency for the old people. I also trained a lot of our women. After empowering them, we empowered them with 200,000 naira each to support their businesses, especially the low income earners and of course the vulnerable ones. You have to use your position as a lawmaker, the position that you are in, to influence. And attract a lot of these things to your constituency.
So, Honorable, I want to talk about inclusion of women in leadership and decision-making positions. And you are only one of, I believe, 16 women. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yes. In a house, in a chamber that is supposed to have 360 representatives. How does it feel?
Very bad. For instance, I am from Lagos State. We are 24 from Lagos State, and I'm the only woman amongst the 24. As legislators, we have started to push for a bill now to give extra seats for our women. And that bill, we have allowed the Deputy Speaker of the House of Rep to be the one, at the forefront. We need our men to start speaking on women issues, to start speaking on representation of women. I also have another campaign that has started to ensure that we can start canvassing for our political parties to have political party reforms, because it's the political parties that select the candidates, that elect the candidates through their constituencies. You must be able to balance it, even if it's just women, at least in every state. So we are saying no and campaigning loudly. And I want women in the leading women show to also, amplify that campaign for us, that we are saying no to single gender list henceforth.
Well, this is a great place to take a quick break, and we'll continue the conversation when we get back. Great, welcome back. So let's take a question from the audience.
All right, thank you. I have a question. What can be done to ensure that policies outlast administration?
Thank you very much. It's very important for our policies to be able to stand the test of time. We must monitor what happens in the nation. We have a role to play. Don't think that you have elected people and that is it. You have to continue to monitor what happens there. How many of us in this hall has tried to check the budget of our local governments, our immediate local government? How many of us in this hall even know our councillors? How many of you know your councillors in this hall? So we have to, as citizens, be able to monitor what happens. The pothole in front of your house or in your street, have you tried to check at the local government to ask why that road has not been, been done? How much was budgeted for it? If you walk in there, they will answer you.
Fantastic. I'm so glad that we got to hear that question. Now we would love to hear your final thoughts, Honorable, on the conversation that we've had today. You've highlighted to us the importance of understanding the issues, how as a lawmaker you take that, how you identify your priorities, and how you're championing some of that, and you gave us examples. But what would you love to leave our audience with today?
Well, for the audience, I want to say that Nigeria belongs to all of us. We are all Nigerians, and this country can be great. Let us have positive attitude towards the greatness of Nigeria. Let us continue to be patient, to persevere, and continue to pray for this country. And let us as citizens be optimistic that as individuals, we have a role to play, and that you can be whatever you want to be. As young people, the future is not anywhere. The future is now. So please take charge of this country, take charge of it, do what you need to do, play your role as a citizen, and also ensure that you continue to pray for this country to get to where it ought to be. Nigeria can be great again. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was a fantastic conversation. Let's take a quick break, and when we return, His Excellency Liali Moke will be joining us. Welcome back. So we have our guest in the studio with us, His Excellency Liali Moke. Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Fantastic. So today we're talking about the art of policy making. I promise you, this first question is not a trick question. But considering the fact that
Since
you have
preempted the question.
Considering the fact that you've led policy at some of the highest levels, would you say that policy is an art or a science or both?
Oh, you said it wasn't a trick question.
It wasn't.
The best way to answer that is to say it's a little bit of both. There's an art to it. Okay. And that art comes from basically your vision and your experiences. There's a science to policy making, which means that good policy making can only be made with data and with relevant information.
Right. So it's both an art
Yes.
and a science.
Indeed.
Fantastic.
Mhm.
So, you know, if I think about our context in Nigeria,
Right.
we deal with so many complexities.
Mhm. Mhm.
And as someone who has been responsible for millions of lives,
Right.
I would like to understand what is your thought process when you're thinking about making policy for millions of people?
First, I don't think anyone should get elected into any office without having a clear manifesto and a clear understanding of what are the expectations of those who you intend to serve. And that can help us, of course, come up with a document which you would implement, not born out of my own thinking of what the people need, but a better understanding coming from the bottom up.
Yes.
An understanding of what the people themselves expect. And if you deliver what they expect, then certainly I think you would be much more effective as an administrator.
So I'm hearing you say that, and I'm thinking of just the Nigeria of today.
Yes.
If you ask a typical Nigerian what they need,
Yeah.
Your Excellency, the list is long. Oh.
Yeah.
So how does a policymaker make those trade-offs? Should they eat first? Should they go to school first? Should they have healthcare first? How do you prioritize?
I think for the society, sometimes you have a challenge in the society. When I say you have a challenge in the society, sometimes the extreme nature of the challenges we face make it difficult even for those who you interact with at the community level, the communal level, to actually define their needs.
This
and
is
that's
true.
exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
So in terms of prioritizing, what would be the one thing that everybody would want addressed? I think clearly in Nigeria's society today, the one thing that everybody wants addressed is poverty. Okay, so if you're going to design policies around poverty and alleviating poverty, that's a good beginning. Now, it's only when you've designed those policies that actually alleviate poverty that you can now say, you must go to school as part of the process of alleviating poverty.
Yes.
So education, okay, is also a component of alleviation. Okay, and their health is also a component of alleviating that poverty. Provision of access to healthcare, provision to qualitative, affordable education, and of course, provision of basic infrastructure, not the fancy stuff, not the flyovers, just the basic infrastructure, access to, health and sanitation, boreholes,
clean
water
water,
supply, you know what I mean, etc.
Yeah.
So if you're revolving your policies around that, you have a significant impact on the community. The challenge is we celebrate things that don't really affect the people the most. So we're not really people-oriented.
Human-centered
No,
design.
we don't have human-centered policies.
Yes.
Policies are derived from what will celebrate us. So it's better to construct flyovers, okay, and wide roads, okay, which when you do a proper study have a less significant impact on the population than if you actually went to those people and said to them, what are your priorities? Some might say, I'll give you an example. I had a community in a place called Obubra. And when we're doing our, we're preparing our data and preparing our policy document, went to that community, and we were of the impression that, hey, this will have a guinea worm challenge. Okay, so we're gonna have to address that problem by providing them access to water,
Yes.
clean water supply. But we got to the community and they said, no, sorry, that's not our priority.
Oh, wow.
I said, what's your priority? They said a police station. I said, why? They said, we're a border community.
Ah.
Okay? So priority number one for that particular community where we as government
Thought it was Guinea worm.
thought it was Guinea worm, they themselves said, no, please first build a police station for us. That gives you an understanding of the impact of communicating with those who you intend to serve.
Right.
Right.
Fantastic. Well, I mean, you already shared a story, and I'm thinking, let's go from theory to practice. Can you share with us some of the toughest decisions that you had to make that involved, I don't know, potential crisis, trading off, maybe could even have cost you your re-election, for example?
Yeah, of course. By the time you get into leadership positions, there are quite a number of those hard decisions that
hopefully not on a daily basis
that you have to make, and they truly affect the society. I'll talk about women. When I got into office, I saw that women participation in the public sector and in politics was minimal. So I insisted that we would come up with a policy that encouraged women participation. And part of that policy was that we would meet the minimum 35%
affirmative action.
So it was an affirmative action policy that actually emphasized not just appointive positions for women, but also elective positions for women. So you can imagine the resistance.
We still need your strategy for today, unfortunately, many years later. Many years later. But thank you for sharing that. Yes. And unfortunately, that resistance still exists. And so I want to talk a little bit about the inclusion. What changes when women lead? I think it's important for people to know that inclusive leadership does offer benefits. And what would you say? Because you weren't just saying, let women lead because they are women.
Yeah.
You were saying that for a reason. Can you share maybe some of what happened as a result of them leading, or what you knew that was backing your insistence on them being part of the political process and leadership?
I think for me, where you have discrimination for reasons that are not clear other than gender, it affects societal development significantly. So if you look at women and feel that they're inferior in knowledge and intellect, then you're lying. Because I went to school, I went to a mixed school, and there were women that trashed my ass in the exams. You understand what I mean? So it's not like the women are less intelligent than men. You know what I mean? So that's very clear. And so why is it that women all of a sudden
leadership?
We go to high school, we go to university, women beat us, qualify with higher, grades, higher grades,
yes.
And then all of a sudden they are not fit to occupy certain positions or do certain things.
Yeah.
I think if we have an elected woman governor, ultimately in Nigeria one day, it would break, that whole barrier. And with women keep talking about the ceiling, and I think we started that process. But in terms of
benefits,
what the benefits are of a woman being in government, I think they bring different perspectives. They also are naturally more humane, more concerned about society. They're usually more impactful in terms of policy and decision making. Okay, and they are less given to looking for accolades and being celebrated. They're more focused in their responsibilities. And generally, they tend to achieve better in key positions. Now, I don't want to say that every woman is that way.
This is true.
You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
from my own experience, the women who have held key positions when I was in government at various levels, have excelled. I worked with President Obasanjo, and women in the cabinet did very well.
Absolutely.
Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala was in
Yes.
that cabinet. Obieze Ekwesili was in that
Absolutely.
cabinet,
Yeah.
and several other women.
Yes.
So we must celebrate, you know what I mean? So we must celebrate the women.
Yes, fantastic. Well, this is a great place to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Okay.
Welcome back. We're still talking about the art of policy making. So, Your Excellency, I want to go into, we've talked a lot about policy design process.
Right.
And as a country, we're not lacking policies. So let's talk a little bit about implementation.
Yeah.
And what often goes wrong there? Why is it that even if the policy wasn't, created through an inclusive process, but when it's time to implement, we fall short? What are these challenges? Maybe there's something that happens there. We've not gone there, we've not been there. You've been there, Your Excellency. Tell us. Because some people even say Nigeria, maybe something is doing us. So what happens there what is that gap between having good intentions, but not being able to translate it to the outcomes that people really want?
Well, first, I think the great challenge is not the existence of the policy. It is the process of the formation of that policy. So before you come to the failure in implementation, okay, that process of policy formulation is critical. Was there stakeholder engagement in the process? Was there transparency and accountability in that process? Was there an understanding of what the focus of the policy would be ab initio? And was there an understanding of the societal problem that you wanted to address with the policy? Those are very important when it comes to implementation. Now, if there's a failure ab initio, implementation of that policy would be a big challenge. Now, when we talk about implementation, we're looking at largely an M&E framework. So is there a proper M&E framework, for us to actually use to determine the effectiveness of the implementation of those policies? So a lot of the policies fail because ab initio, they're not properly conceptualized. But beyond that, there are a number of other factors that may contribute to the failure of policies. Of course, in a political environment, you're going to see changes in government and administration. So the lack of continuity and the failure to understand the reasoning behind the policy may also lead to its failure. You also have corruption in implementing the policies. So that also would contribute to the failure of implementing such a policy. Sometimes you also have a funding challenge. Okay, so here's a beautiful policy, it's being implemented. Somebody comes in and says, no, I'm no longer funding that initiative. You know what I mean? So that policy also fails. Then of course, there's also the stakeholders. So if there wasn't adequate stakeholder engagement ab initio, and they don't take ownership, the beneficiaries of whatever that policy is don't take ownership of the policy, it's also very unlikely that it will succeed. So there are quite a number of reasons why policies fail, especially in Nigeria.
And I think you've highlighted quite a few of them. Nigerians would agree with you on corruption,
Yes.
Sometimes deprioritization due to funding, and of course, change in administration. That one, is frustrating.
It is, yes, yes, yes.
I want to talk about public trust.
Yes.
I personally am of the opinion that trust is a scarce commodity, in our climes, but I think even globally. How do we start to rebuild trust between the citizens and the people that are supposed to serve them? Because as you know, you just talked about it, stakeholder engagement. If it doesn't happen prior, then there's no ownership, then there's no sustainability. How can we rebuild public trust? And you can take that any way you want, because I feel like...
I think public trust starts from the elective process. We can't elect people into office without having some trust in them. Or we shouldn't.
We shouldn't.
we shouldn't, you know what I mean? And this is corresponding. When I say corresponding relationships between those who seek to serve the people and of course the people themselves. And so what happens is that there is an erosion of trust, no doubt about it. But what are the reasons that there's that erosion? It's that the expectations of the electorate are hardly ever met. And that has been the case over the years. And so how do you meet or satisfy those expectations? And how do they trust you that you would be different? And I think for me, in Nigeria, you're right, public trust is
at an all-time low?
It's at an all-time low. Voter turnout is clearly indicative of how low that trust is.
Yes.
The voter turnout averages in the mid-20s.
20-something,
in terms of percentage. So clearly, that's indicative of just of what you said.
Yes.
However, okay, there are two things. One, I would suggest that those who we elect, we do have the power to determine the qualities that they possess. I always say this, I give an example. In my local government, maybe I come from a riverine community. So maybe there's a very popular canoe paddler, okay? Very popular canoe paddler. He paddles the canoe very well. He transports people in his canoe, and everybody in the village, in that community, knows him. And then he decides to run for local government chairman. Okay? And then we know him. He's our guy. He's a paddler. He decides to run for local government chairman. He gets elected as local government chairman. Okay? Now, that society has qualified people. They have educated people. They have people who've been exposed, who've held different offices, but none of them either contest for elective office or none of them
were elected.
Were elected.
Yeah.
So this guy gets elected. And then it's always amazing how this guy becomes the chairman and chief executive of my local government. And then all of us start expecting performance from him. We forget that he was
a canoe paddler.
Then when he doesn't do electricity, he doesn't do anything that helps us, and we start abusing him. You know what I mean? Oh, this foolish man. But what do you expect from a canoe paddler? So we must understand that those who we elect ab initio, you know what I mean, do not get into the office and acquire some knowledge that they did not have before they were elected. Okay, so we trusted this local government chairman. We elected him, but we've lost trust in him. Why did we lose trust in him? He failed to deliver. So how do we ensure that we address the challenge of trust when it comes to the public sector? It's only on delivery to their own expectations and to have an impact on the lives of the people. Our policies as a nation must go back and focus on the well-being and the human development indices that are critical. But as Nigerians, for some strange reason, we don't pay any attention to what's most important in that regard, because they are not, you don't get brownie points, okay? So if as governor, because I remember as governor, I always told my commissioner for works that his job was the easiest. And he would resist it and say, how can my job be the easiest? I said, what is there in just putting together, you know what I mean? The commissioner for health has a big problem. Yeah. His job is much more difficult, but the commissioner for works will be celebrated for a road constructed, but the commissioner for health will not be celebrated for improving maternal, infant 10%. And maternal mortality by 10%. Yeah. Okay, so as governor who wants to get it re-elected, what do I do?
Tell us what you did.
What do? You understand? Do you go for the glamour projects that have little impact on the people? Or do you go for the projects, you understand what I mean, that have a significant impact on the people that you serve, but do not actually get you celebrated? I focused on the people. I've never been one who wanted to be celebrated, you know what I mean? So I'm not a showman. You know, I wanted to focus on the people. You know what I mean? Yes. So I focused on rural development. I focused on healthcare delivery. I focused on qualitative education. You understand? Of course, that didn't mean that we ignored infrastructure and everything else. But it was just about your focus. And it's amazing, and your priorities. Yes. And there was a lot of stakeholder engagement. And I think that made a big difference in governance. And I think for us, that's something that we have no regrets about. And I think something that years after is still being acknowledged by the people of Cross River.
Fantastic.
Yes.
So I want to spend the remaining time we have together in this segment talking about young people. So I know you have the Bridge Leadership Foundation. Yes. I mean, I've been a part of that work.
Thank you.
And all the amazing work you're doing there. What is the role of young people? What is this vision that you see? And I know that you have been, coming into leadership young yourself. So what is this vision that you see?
For me, what's the vision behind the foundation? Okay, I had the privilege of getting into politics at a very early age. I was idealistic. Okay, I had gone abroad to school in Washington, and I went to the Library of Congress, and I saw the congressmen and how they function, and I thought, wow, you know what I mean? This is what it should be like. So I now came back to Nigeria, and I said, okay, I'm going into politics. And everybody looked at me and said, are you okay? You know what I mean? And I remember going to one of our political leaders, and I told him I want to run an election for the Senate. And he looked at me and said, Senate, why are you going? What do you want to do? Small boy, you want to go to the Senate? And I said, yes. He said, no, go for State Assembly or House of Reps. I said, sir, why? He said, because you win it now. I said, yes, sir, that's my problem. But I don't know whether I can win Senate. So why would I go for the one that I know? Let me try the one. And when you're young, now, of course, now I'm 60-something, right? So if you tell me at 60-something, go for State Assembly or House of Reps, I'm sorry, I'm like, let me take it. But when you're young, you're full of energy. You understand? You're resourceful. You're ready to take on challenges.
That's right.
And that's what the young people must understand and appreciate. And the whole idea for the foundation was that I had to work with young people at that young age, but I found them to have a lot of energy, a lot of potential, but they were not as resourceful and they were not exposed. You know what I mean? So if these young men were to actually come into public office, they did not, and they would not have, the grooming that it takes. Leaders, I don't believe that leaders are born. Okay? I don't. I think it's a deliberate process. And for Nigeria, at this point in time, we need to take deliberate steps to groom the next generation of leaders.
Men and women.
Men and women. And that's the whole idea behind the foundation. So we work with young people because we feel very strongly that the reality, nobody needs to tell us that the future is in the
it's not tomorrow, it's now.
Yeah, the future is with the young people. We all know that. I mean, I was young, but also the young people must understand that nobody's going to give them space.
Yeah.
So no young man will come to me and say to me, Excellency, I've been in public office now, leave the place. I'll say, no, Haba. I've been here for so long. I'm enjoying it. You know what I mean? It's now for you to go back and say, okay, we told him to leave. Oh.
He did not.
He refused to leave. We're taking him out. You understand? And so that's what I did. I started a movement in my state with a number of young people. You know what I mean? Including people like Donald Duke, Gershom Bassi, several others. A movement to take on
the establishment.
And the establishment. And that's what we actually did. And so it's for young people to understand that. And so we work with them at the foundation to hone in on their skills. We try to identify the ones that are amply qualified and committed to making a difference in society. Yeah. And we work with young people like that. And we've been able to impact several of them. And I think for the young people in Nigeria, both men and women, I think they need to take the gauntlets. I find it odd that you have a voter turnout of 20-something% and you have a 60% youth population that can determine the future of the country. So what is the gap? What's the challenge? So at the foundation, we're hoping that we can bring up young people who would eventually participate in these processes and who can identify and relate with the younger generation and drive a process of change in society.
Fantastic. Well, so it's time for us to take another break. When we return, we will take some questions from the audience. Welcome back. So let's take a question from the audience.
Hi, sir. Thank you very much for the conversation. My question is, what are the measures that can be put in place to hold leaders accountable for the implementation of policies?
Oh, yeah. There are many measures in place to hold leaders accountable, beyond the EFCC, of course. But there are many measures put in place. There are natural measures. One is that leaders are elected. If they don't perform well, you can take them out. But our Constitution actually provides for measures to ensure that leaders are accountable. The Constitution provides, for instance, for the State Assembly and the National Assembly, okay, and the judiciary. So there's supposed to be 3 arms of government, and the envisioners of our Constitution expect that one arm can hold the other accountable. And then there are several institutions that are already in existence that are supposed to enforce that. Whether we talk about the FCC, the ICPC, and several other regulatory institutions that are in place in government. But ultimately, the power lies with the people. If the people fail to insist on accountability, the political class will continue to manipulate those institutions to their own advantage.
Absolutely. I agree. That was a very important question. I'm glad we got to answer it. Now, we'll see what some Nigerians out there have to say before we take closing remarks from our guest.
No, they do not. Because hardly, maybe one day I might just actually find out they are constructing something somewhere.
Lọ́wọ́ ń bẹ̀ rárá 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 torí akànjọ́ ọmọ ìlú ni àràǹfààní ìlú jẹ́ rárá rárá rárá.
No, I'll be very honest, because our voice are not being heard.
I don't think so.
At all.
No, I don't think so.
I heard of women empowerment.
They should give citizen grants to Nigerians. They should. Even South Africa does that.
Chinese, they don't believe in education like that. They believe in, training up young talent, and if you have a little talent that you have, they'll always want to bring out the best in it.
Government should make loans available for small businesses, and that will go a long way to enhance productivity and also help the economy.
So many important points have been highlighted in this episode. Now, to bring our conversation to a close, Your Excellency, would love to hear your final thoughts.
My final thoughts. First, I'd like to say a few words about the leading women show and to commend you, and your team for this all-important discussion. This engagement is critical for the evolution of society, and I hope that you remain consistent with the engagement and that you can actually get this show and this event or program across to critical audiences and get them to understand its importance and even participate in the discussion. My final thoughts is that on the other side, when I look at what we do and the public sector and the impact of our activities on the society and our policies and programs, I think we need to go back and look at critical policies and programs and initiatives that have had the most impact on our people, and review those policies and refocus on how we can actually alleviate the challenges. The critical thing is poverty. If we address the challenge of poverty, then we're on our way to a much more prosperous society. And the only way we can achieve that is by implementing the right policies and programs. So if we get it right with policies, if we get it right with legislation, if we get it right with implementation, and if we get the youth to participate in all of this, then I think ultimately the society would be the better for it. I'm an eternal optimist. I just believe that Nigeria, no matter how bad it gets, it'll get better.
I agree with you.
Thank you very much.
All right, it's been such an insightful conversation on today's episode, and we would like to say a big thank you to our guest, His Excellency, Liel Imoke.
Thank you very much.
We would also like to thank Honorable Kafila Togbara, and to our audience, thank you for being such a valuable part of today's discussion. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on social media to share your thoughts on this episode using the hashtag on your screen. I'm Abosede Jajagan. Remember, women's leadership can change everything, everywhere. See you next week.